I am sitting here before a lush bed of the unique plant known as kudzu, and I'm just entranced by this plant, this bit of vegetation, and it's growing wildly in this area where I've been for the last few days. This undisclosed location. Um, Although part of what I'm going to say in this video will give some hints as to the approximate location of where I am at. Um, I want to talk. I want to use this lush bed of kudzu as the backdrop to this story. I don't know exactly how it fits, but I am sure it does in some way, metaphorically, and I'll figure it out as I go. Yesterday was a very strange and unique synchronicity for me, and I do believe in synchronicity. Um, this. I guess I should preface this as another quote schizo rant. This will be categorized by some in that manner, and if you choose to see it that way, whatever you want to do is, you know, I'm not going to say it's fine with me, but I can't stop you, and you can't stop me. So we're just gonna have to coexist somehow, you and I. But hopefully, there's more of you out there who are at least open-minded about the notion of synchronicity and the story that I'm about to tell y'all. And this is what's going to give away my approximate location. Yesterday, I attended a Major League Baseball game at uh, Truist Park in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I think it's technically in maybe in Roswell, Georgia, or maybe in Marietta, but it's the current home of the Atlanta Braves. Um, I grew up in Metro Atlanta, as many of you know, and when I attended the game yesterday, the this was something that was sort of planned um, in a haphazard way. Initially, we had intended to catch one of the games on their homestand, and it was going to be initially it was going to be last night's game, or I'm sorry, 2 nights ago, the game on Wednesday night, because it was Ron Gant bobblehead night, and that Ron Gant happened to be my favorite player on the Braves as I was growing up, or in my college years, in my early 20s. And the first wave of Atlanta Braves um, success in the early to mid '90s. Uh, he was he was my guy. I just loved his style of play, and so we were going to go to that game, but through a series of uh, I don't know, misunderstandings. One of which was not knowing that actually the game on yesterday, was a day game. We found that there were more tickets available for that game, and we ended up reserving tickets for that game. And that game, we found out later, was a day game, and of course, it was hot as balls, uh, and you know, it was our seats were right in the sun. We were roasting, but it was a lot of fun because the Braves won. And uh, here's where the story really begins. What you've heard so far is just prologue. What I found out was that yesterday was July 20th. And I found out that 30 years ago, July 20th, uh, uh, 1993, was the day there was a mysterious fire at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, where the Braves then played, which was more in the downtown area. And this was the night where I don't want to get too in the weeds here for people who aren't interested in baseball. It's not really important whether you like baseball or not. It's not integral to this story, but the Braves had just signed Fred McGriff, this new player. They'd accomplished this trade. They were in this tough pennant battle with the San Francisco Giants, who seemed invincible that year, and they got Fred McGriff. And my friend and I were at the game that Fred McGriff was to play for the very first time. And it just so happened that in that game, a couple of hours before the game was set to start, the press box caught on fire. This massive fire raged through the press box and much of a certain part of the club level. And they said it was later because a can of Sterno was left in one of the press boxes, was left unattended, and because it burned, it caught the rest of the immediate structure on fire, to the point where eventually it was a huge conflagration, at least in that one section of the stadium, and there were questions about whether the game was going to happen at all. And my friend and I were there. We were excited to see Fred McGriff play for the first time with the Braves. We were hoping that he would give them the spark that they needed to gain some ground on the San Francisco Giants, who just seemed like they were invincible up till then, and time was running out in the season. There weren't that many more games left to be played. It was late July, so they ended up delaying the game by a couple of hours, and then playing at 9:40. 2 hours later than the game was scheduled to start. And again, I was there. I was at the game, and this was just a magical sort of event, a magical occasion, because of the surreality of it, because of the fire, the fact that the fire was the fire happened. Looking back, with the lens that I see the world through now, it's I don't think I've ever heard anyone float any alternative explanations as to what exactly was the reason for the fire. But there was, if you watch some of the coverage of it, there was at least one loud boom that sounded like an explosion. And they said it was a beam of metal that got overheated and that exploded. Now, God, I don't want to get into the jet fuel and melting steel beams, etc., and so on. But does a sterno can, does the fire left by a sterno can, which is meant to heat food, does that lead to an explosion happening? I don't know. I'm not saying anything generally. I'm not making any definitive statements here about this, but I just, the story, it's never really been questioned, and it's never really been even examined that closely what caused this fire. But and even at the time, nobody was really. I mean, while we were waiting outside the stadium, wondering if there was going to be a game or not that night, we didn't even think to ourselves, "I wonder what caused the fire." We just thought, "Oh well, there was a fire, but they put it out. So are they going to let the game go ahead and happen?" and it turned out that they did, and I think that's something that would not happen today. I think there was a greater degree of freedom, more of a spirit of freedom in 1993 than there is 30 years later, where today they would just have, well, we just, out of an abundance of caution, we're going to postpone, the lingo, the rhetoric. You hear it all the time. It's corporate speak. But at the time, it was like, no, fuck no, we're going to play the game. We've got Fred McGriff, man. We're playing this game. This game is going to happen. Now, they had to rope off a couple of sections of the field level seats. I don't know what the fans who had those seats did, if they were seated elsewhere or what. I guess the game wasn't totally sold out, but it wasn't totally sold out. Very few games were totally sold out in those days, but it was well attended. So anyway, they roped off a couple sections, and then they said, "Y'all come on in," and at around 9:40 or so, the game started. Now, we were watching the game, and I just the press box area was just totally blackened, charred. It looked well, it looked like a place where a fire had raged, because that was exactly what had happened. And so it was weird to see these press boxes just looking like an accident scene. But still, and also these sections roped off, for safety purposes. But still, the game is being played, and all the people in the press, the announcers and the television and radio people, they all had to move to some other place in the club section. It was just like a fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. That, again, I just don't think would happen today, because everything is so corporatized. Everything is just has to be so streamlined, and everybody has to be, like I've talked about before. They've got, you attend any professional sporting event, and it's like they have to entertain you every second. They never leave you alone. Like at a baseball game, between innings, it's got to be, okay, now look at this on the screen. Now we're going to have this happen and that happen, and we're gonna race some guys in oversized Home Depot outfits dressed as screwdrivers, and and now we're gonna do the kiss cam, and now we're gonna show people on the people in the crowd and the celebrities they resemble. And some of it's amusing and entertaining, but the thing is, it's just like they didn't do that back then. Between innings, it was just sort of, you just sat and waited for the game to continue. It was different. It was a different era. 30 years ago. So we sat there and we watched this game unfold in these surreal conditions, with this new exciting player with the Braves, giving us hope, giving us life. In a season that had so far just been, again, just a disappointment, where it just looked like they had a great pitching staff, a legendary pitching staff with Glavine and Maddox and Smoltz, and some great sluggers like Gant and Justice, and other speedsters like Otis Nixon and Deion Sanders, and anyway, they were a good team, but they were just not able to keep pace with the Giants. And that night, we saw life come into this team. First, they fell way behind, and then they were losing 5-0. Then they started clawing back into it, and then it was 5-3, and then Fred McGriff was up with a runner on, and it was his second at bat as an Atlanta Brave, and he hit a home run, and he tied the score, and the whole stadium went nuts. The whole, uh, fire-scarred stadium was erupting in cheers, and the announcers were sitting in their makeshift spots, talking, doing the best they could, outside of their comfort zone, their press box comfort zone, um, and so they ended up winning the game in thrilling fashion. They came roaring back and won the game, and that was the beginning of a great comeback. They eventually did start to gain on the Giants, and then before you knew it, they were within a couple games, and then they were tied, and then they were ahead, and then they were tied again, and then finally, the last game of the year, they prevailed and won the pennant. And it all started with that fire game. You could see how it works metaphorically. They were fired up after that game. It gave them a spark, however you want to put it. Anyway, the synchronicity is that I didn't know that was the date, and I just found out today that I was at the game at the Atlanta Braves game 30 years later, 30 years after the date of this hugely significant game, which was so wild and so mysterious, and so surreal. And now, I of course, I wonder about the quote unquote official story. Of course, that's become the sort of go-to when you're a conspiracy theorist, and I am. The quote official story unquote becomes, like the that's like shorthand for the lies that you've been told. But I'm not saying that anything untoward happened, or that it wasn't simply an accident. But a can of Sterno starting this massive blaze on the very same day that Fred McGriff shows up, and it's weird. It's wild. And again, to have this be again 30 years later, going right back to see the game. It's not at the same stadium. It's not at the same location, but it's still the same team. And so much has changed. Again, like I was saying, the sport, like so much else out there, the world is a less wild and free, and cool and crazy sort of place. It's become just this streamlined, homogenized, corporatized, watch what you say or else we'll cancel you kind of world. And I don't know, it seems to me that there's something about the fact that I was there and that I had been there on that night when the fire happened, and that was the same day in the calendar year that I just happened to go to this game, which I didn't know was going to be the game that I'd be going to. Gosh, I hope this isn't all just totally convoluted. I hope there are at least 3 or 4 people still watching this to the very end. I just feel like there's something important to note about all of this. In yesterday's game, there was no fire, but there was the fire from the sky. Because it was a day game, there was the fire of the sun, the blazing sun, which gave me a mild sort of sunburn. Nothing too bad, but it just I guess to further my general point about how times have changed. When we went to enter the stadium, now you have to go through a metal detector and then get approval, and you have to empty your pockets, and put it in the little box, just like at the airport. And I had brought, stupidly, I should have known better, but I brought a spray, a sunscreen, spray variety. I know some of you are going to say that's cancerous. Maybe it is. I don't know. I just don't like to burn in the sun. So sue me. But I'd only managed to put a little bit on before, entering the game, and they said, the man said, "Well, look, I'm going to have to take this from you." And I was kind of pissed, and I was kind of annoyed, and I said, am I not going to be able to get it back? And he said, "Well, we can leave it here and you can get it later." And then I think he noticed me, because he was with security, and I think their job is like to notice people that seem a little off the beaten path, or strange, or odd, or something. And I think the fact that a spray can, I guess, can be used as a weapon, if it has some kind of material in it. That's the rationale. Again, it was a dumb thing to do. I should have just brought the sort of the rub-on type of sunscreen. But he noticed me, and he was like pretending to be all friendly and just sort of have a conversation. But he saw that I was wearing something you've seen before, my Washington Redskins t-shirt. Now, I've got it on right now. It's kind of smelly because I haven't changed, and I worked out this morning. But that's neither here nor there. So instead of having a Braves shirt or a Braves hat, I had my Washington Redskins, my politically incorrect, anti-woke, before the name change, Washington Redskins t-shirt. And I had my raggedy Falcons cap on, so I wasn't wearing Braves gear, so I was sticking out a little bit, and I sort of wanted to not just be one of the herd, even though I was cheering for the Braves and I'm a Braves fan. And I think he sort of gave me a once over, and was sort of like, pretending to be friendly, pretending to be like, "Hey, what are you going for with that look?" But he was a security guard, so he was like trying to figure out, was I dangerous, or was I trying to make a statement or something? And I was a little taken aback. I shrugged, and I said, "Well, it's just I don't know, I wanted to be a little different." But I doubt anyone in 1993, after you entered the turnstile, well, first of all, you just handed them your ticket. They tore it in half, gave you one half of it, then you walked through the turnstile, and that was that. There was no getting a once over. There was no collecting your items. There was no walking through a metal detector. So again, that shows you the degree to which things have changed, and that you might stand out as being a possible domestic terrorist because you're wearing anti-woke, uh, an anti-woke T-shirt. By the way, I'm not even I'm not even a fan of the Washington football team, but I just, gravitated to the old style shirt, just as a middle finger to political correctness. So that happened, and then we were we we were supposed to get to our seat, but there was a section that we couldn't walk through, so we went up to the level where our seat was, but we couldn't just walk through this other place because we didn't have the right kind of ticket, I guess. So they made us go all the way down, and then down one section, and then over, and then up again, and it was like, again, there wouldn't be these kinds of obstructions thrown in front of you back then. I'm not saying everything was perfect back then. I'm not saying that, it's everything's a trade-off, and in some ways, maybe there's something to be gained by living in a more streamlined, air-conditioned, comfortable sort of world, as opposed to a more wild and free world like the kudzu out there. The kudzu that cannot be controlled, that goes where it wants to go. You can't you can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it, to use one of the sports metaphor. That's true of kudzu. And it's not a kudzu world anymore. It's a what is it? I don't know. I guess they'll claim it's a garden, but it's a garden full of a lot of poisonous fruit, in my mind. So, the fire, the Atlanta fire. I mean, Atlanta died in a fire with Sherman's March to the Sea. Fire played a huge role in the history of Atlanta, a tragic role. General Sherman, at the behest of President Lincoln, both of them war criminals. They rampaged through the state of Georgia, burning and looting everywhere, and they torched Atlanta. They burnt it to the ground. The world had not seen warfare like that for a long, long time. This was like going back to the exterminationist, genocidal type of wars of the ancient years. Warfare in more recent times had been, the forces for both sides meet on the battlefield and fight it out there, and civilian casualties kept to an absolute minimum. But Civil War, the American Civil War, changed all that. So I just find it interesting. Again, speaking of synchronicities, you've got a fire that burnt down Atlanta, and then Atlanta rebuilt itself. And Atlanta Fulton County Stadium was a massive part of the rebuilding effort, even though it came a lot later. But the whole idea was, this is the new South. We're not like that anymore. We're not like those terrible Confederate flag waving people. This is the modern South, and we're separating ourselves from our traditions, and we're marching forward in harmony with our industrial brothers of the North. And Atlanta Fulton County Stadium was like it was a very workmanlike kind of structure. It was, just it was completely rounded. Uh, there were no quaint sort of baseball dimensions to it. It was what they called a cookie cutter sort of stadium, built in the mid '60s, and a lot of things were built in that style back then, just to be functional. And yet, it could not. This emblem of the New South could not escape the fire. The fire sprang up again that night, that fateful night, July 20th, 1993. And we were there for that unforgettable fire. The Atlanta fire that ushered in the era of Fred McGriff, the crime dog, as they called him, because of McGruff, the crime dog. They named him after that. But anyhow, a lot coursing through my mind right now, and maybe there's been a certain lack of coherence to some of it, but I hope you all gained a little bit of something from this peroration, and I don't know. I guess the final thoughts I want to leave with are: whence the fire? Was it really a can of Sterno that was left in the press box that caused this massive fire, that caused some kind of explosion, or something that sounded like an explosion in the press box area? And yet, in spite of this catastrophe, they still played the game. Today, they would never do that in this streamlined, super safe, corporatized kind of world that they've created. But it was different back then. It was still a little touch of the wild, and the wild. Don't think the wilderness has gone away. Don't think that just because they're not showing it anymore, that they're not featuring it anymore, that they're banning it, like they banned that song on CMT. Try that in a small town. They banned that song from CMT. That they try to make it so that you can't see these kinds of things. They don't actually exist, but they exist. That song is now at #1 on the charts. So they still exist, and the kudzu is out there. It's still growing. The kudzu is freedom, and freedom will prevail, just like kudzu will prevail. All right, I'll end it there. Thanks for watching.